Hi, good morning. We are here in Tinsmith shop. It's um it's only a picture. Later on we will go there. The Tinsmith shop is built in 1840. This building welcomed the residents of Woodbridge, first as a tinsmith shop and then a hardware store. After a long life serving local shoppers, the building returned to its roots as a tinsmith shop when it moved to Black Creek Pioneer Building. So later on we will go to the tinsmith shop. We will go together with them. Somebody will tour us. This is the costume.
Well, if you like, we can go out into the village and start our tour.
Okay, thank you.
We might as well go start our tour. Boardwalk's not the most.
Yeah, that's okay. It's nice here. Wow.
Just gonna go along this side. Little patch of shade here. We need it.
Shady place.
Okay, so let's stop here for a second.
Okay.
So
Can I take you a video?
if you like it.
Okay.
So, Black Creek Pioneer Village is on what remains of a 200-acre lot that belonged to Daniel and Elizabeth Strong. Of course, before they came to farm the land, there were, of course, indigenous people who lived in the area, and it was at the time that the treaty with the British Crown occurred, it was the land of the Mississauga of Credit First Nation. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And also specifically, just at the southern end of that 200-acre lot that belonged to Daniel Elizabeth was a Wendat village about 550 to 500 years ago. So the Wendat lived in longhouses and they were farmers. So they would have farmed some of the same land that 300 years later Daniel Elizabeth Stong farmed. So that was at the south end. So where the very south end of York University campus is, that was where that village was located. So they lived in multi-family longhouses. And they eventually moved their village, and the whole sort of group of Wendat that were in the north shore of Lake Ontario actually moved farther north to the area around Lake Simcoe, Georgian Bay. And after a number of things happened, it came into the control of the Mississauga. In the meantime, some of the Seneca of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy of the Finger Lakes area also occupy the territory. So we recognize that this is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe peoples, including the Mississauga Credit First Nation, and that the City of Toronto is on lands that are traditionally Indigenous, and that they remain so under our treaties, of which all of us are a party to. And it is actually, Toronto is the fourth largest Indigenous community in Canada, including First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. So most of the things that you'll see around here are very much, buildings by people of the settler category who came from Europe or came up from the United States. We do have one structure, but I think it will not be straightforward for you to go into. We have a canvas wigwam that's been created recently by our Indigenous partner group. But maybe
I was here in 1970, 1971 when I was a little boy. Is a lot changed since then, or is it like a lot the same since then?
So I think there's probably one more building. There was one that came here in '74, and then the visitor center was obviously built since then. We have another modded structure.
So a lot has changed since then, I guess.
A certain amount, yes. Yeah.
But some remain the same.
Yeah. So most of the buildings were moved here in the late 1950s and 1960s. So you would have seen them.
Okay, thank you. It's a big beef village. It's a big village.
Yes. So, as I said, it was a farm. So we have the grain barn,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
the
on the other side of that pasture, we have 4 buildings that belong to Daniel Elizabeth Stong. So, if you came here 150 years ago, you would have seen a farm, and then the rest of these
This
buildings.
is 150 years ago?
Yeah, so it's kind of the period, 160, 150 years ago
Wow.
was kind of the area we focus on.
Long time.
And so you would have found the house there. That's the red 2-story house belonging to Daniel Elizabeth. They started out in the smaller house in the middle there.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, and then so there's a few other buildings that were farm outbuildings as well as the houses.
They have the animals too. Ladder. Oh. Wow.
So.
Well, this is where they did the horses.
Yeah, so this is the harness and saddle maker's shop.
When they did make the saddles and all that?
Yes, so a lot of the work would have been making harness for horses. So things like the horse collar, which allowed the horse to pull something like a wagon or a carriage without sort of choking himself or herself. So this was developed many hundreds of years ago as a solution for that because of the location of the windpipe of horses. So various parts of the harness would be attached to
collars,
the horse collar, and this is one of the traces, so this is what would actually hitch the horse to a wagon or a carriage so that they could pull it. So harness makers worked a lot in leather. They also used metal parts, and I think, all right, here it is. This is an example in miniature of how the horse would be harnessed to the trace. There we go. In order to pull a wagon. So we have the horse collar and the traces here that would be attached to the wagon, the reins that the driver would be using, and then the bridle with the bit that would be how you
it's
control
safe
the
for
horse.
them.
So a lot of work went into this. The leather had to be very thick. So the holes had to be pre-punched. So we have a little activity there.
What's this?
The idea is that you would pre-punch the holes with an awl, and then you would do a double stitch where you would stitch both ways through so that there would be a set of stitches on each side. And this would be waxed, the thread would be waxed to make it stronger and less likely to fray. So that back here, kids are running around.